Now I got a bunch of comments from you guys asking me to do a video about the Travis Walton case, and I was familiar with it, I knew the story, but now having looked into it, I can tell you, Jesus Lord, it is a wild ride, way beyond the initial claims and the story itself, and I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of all the twists and turns that happened long after it, so I want to break this down to you guys. It is exciting, so bear with me to the end of the video. I'm gonna retell the story and some of the details in the beginning of this video just to bring people up to speed, because I don't think it is as popularly known as, like, for example, the Bob Lazar story, where it feels like it doesn't need to be retold. I want to retell the story, and then by the end of it, we're going to look at some of the claims, some of the scrutiny of his stories, and some of the big question marks that really evolved around his story. So what is the Travis Walton story? I would say that besides the Betty and Barney Hill alien abduction story, this is probably the most famous case of an alleged alien abduction. The story is that on November 5th, 1975, a 7-person logging crew in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest reported that while they were driving down a forest road, they saw a lighted, illuminated object above the ground near the roadway. And they reported that then Travis Walton, who was one of those 7 people, one of the logging workers, left that truck and ran towards the light when the object shone a light on him. They said that at that point they were leaving in fear, they were driving away and then returning only 15 minutes later to allegedly the same spot, only to find that Walton and the light had gone. Now, the remaining crew of 6, led by crew chief Michael H. Rogers, reported him missing, and on November 7th, a search party of nearly 50 people scoured the area but failed to find Travis or any signs of an altercation as reported by those logging workers. Now, on November 8th, so one day after that, a member of a Phoenix-based UFO interest group recorded a 65-minute interview with the logging crew chief Mike Rogers and Travis' older brother Dwayne Walton. During this interview, at no point did either of them express any fear or concern for Travis. Rather, they expressed confidence that Travis would be returned. Now, reaching this point in the story, there's a few things we need to mention. Like, for example, according to researcher Philip J. Klass, shortly before his disappearance, Travis told his mother not to worry if he ever were abducted by aliens, because he would return safe and sound. Also interesting that just a few weeks before this whole incident happened, the NBC network aired the UFO Incident, which was a special made-for-TV movie about the alleged alien abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. And in that film, they depicted a motorist who walks into the woods towards an overhead light when he's illuminated by a beam of light, and then within weeks of that, Travis Walton had his abduction story or his experience and kind of claimed to have an experience that was very similar to that. And then following on from that point that I said, where Travis allegedly, based on that researcher's statement, told his mother to never worry if he would ever get abducted by aliens, while that missing person investigation was conducted and people were looking for him, Travis' mother told law enforcement and the people who were spearheading this missing person investigation that, and this is a quote, "I don't think there's any use of looking any further. He's not around here. I don't think he's on this earth." So this is his own mother saying this, which, I mean, that already kind of raises all kinds of questions, to be honest. Then on November 8th, Rogers, again, who was the chief and the leader of this logging crew and who was with him when that happened, as well as the other 5 members of the logging crew, were interrogated by the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and all took a polygraph test to determine whether they may have murdered Walton, okay, because at that point he was gone and there was the rumor that they might have just taken his life and trying to cover it up with this alien abduction story. Now, 5 of them passed the test and 1 came back as inconclusive. Now, this is an important point to mention because this is an argument that is often used by believers in this story who say, well, they all passed a lie detector test. How would 5 out of 6 of them have possibly passed that if they would all be telling a lie? But keep in mind, this polygraph test was not to check the truthfulness around their UFO encounter specifically. It was only to determine whether they did any harm to Travis Walton, which truthfully they didn't. And following on from that, based on some research by Michael Shermer and again Philip Klass, they only asked 4 questions during that polygraph test. 3 about the violence against Walton, and only 1 about whether an unusual object was observed. And we'll get to that a bit later in the story, how it might have come to be that some of these logging workers actually believed they saw an unusual light or an unusual object in the sky that night. Now, on November 12th, shortly after midnight, Walton made a phone call to his sister's home from a payphone. He reached her husband on that phone call, and so her husband and her brother drove to pick him up. His brother then reached out to a UFO researcher asking who to consult for medical attention, which is also kind of odd to me. However, that researcher that his brother met shortly before that then referred him to a Dr. Lester Stewart, who was a hypnotherapist. In every source that I could find about this, the doctor was always written in quotation marks, so I don't know if he actually was a doctor or just like a self-proclaimed doctor/hypnotherapist. Anyway, that person, Lester Stewart, reported that Walton seemed very confused, which he described to be reminiscent of some of the drug addicts that he was treating at the time. Dr. Stewart also noticed that Travis had a small puncture wound on the inside crease of his elbow, which is also consistent with intravenous drug use. Again, this is just this doctor claiming this. You can read all this up on the Wikipedia site with references. It doesn't say specifically that any blood tests were taken or that any form of drugs were like proven to be taken by Travis Walton. This is just an observation by this Dr. Stewart, and to be honest, I don't know how much credibility we can lend to his observations. Then a few days later, after that news spread that he was back, the papers tried to get interviews, and on November 15th, Travis was interviewed by Jack McCarthy, who is a freelance polygraph examiner. McCarthy concluded that Travis was engaged in a gross deception and had even been intentionally holding his breath in an attempt to beat the machine. So making it to this point of the story, there's already a huge amount of red flags that I've never heard in any UFO documentary, and I think quite a few of them cast already a big shadow of doubt on this whole story. But bear with me, we are not there. It gets way, way wilder, okay? This is still the rather normal part of this story. Wait till the end of the video. It takes a few turns that I bet you didn't see coming. Now, on November 22nd, he appeared in a TV interview. Obviously, people were trying to get TV interviews, and he was talking about his experience. In that TV interview, he claimed that he lost consciousness when he was struck by the beam of light that came from that light object, and that he awoke in a hospital-like room being observed by 3 short, bald creatures. He claimed that he fought with them until a human wearing a helmet led Walton to another room where he blacked out as 3 other humans put a clear plastic mask over his face. Walton said that he remembers nothing else until he found himself walking along a highway 5 days later with the flying saucer departing above him. The National Enquirer awarded Walton and his co-workers a $5,000 prize for Best UFO Case of the Year, based on them having passed the polygraph test, which again, it just deserves scrutiny. I don't know who did that research at the time, but there's a whole segment on the Wikipedia page of this incident where Michael Shermer and Philip Klass really put a lot of scrutiny on how that polygraph test was conducted, and that basically it lacks a lot of credibility, and for them to award them a lump sum like that only based on that polygraph test seems a bit outlandish. But this wasn't the only place where Walton cashed on in this story. In 1978, Walton wrote a book that's called The Walton Experience, detailing his claims. In 1993, the book served as the inspiration for the 1993 film Fire in the Sky, starring Robert Patrick. He has since appeared on various UFO conventions and on television. In 2008, he appeared on the Fox game show The Moment of Truth, and on January 19th, 2021, he famously appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Now, so much for the story itself. And this is where it gets really wild, okay? Because at this point, sure, there are some red flags. You can believe it, you cannot believe it. It is a very famous abduction case. And as it always is, there is no tangible evidence. But now, in 2021, his chief of the logging crew, like his boss at the time, Mike Rogers, started to come forward and posted the following statement on his Facebook page. I, Michael H. Rogers, being of sound and rational mind, do hereby give notice that I am no longer to be considered a witness to Travis C. Walton's supposed abduction of November 5th, 1975. He later clarified, Travis tried to keep a new remake of the movie secret from me. He has always had his big secrets that he kept from me. It angered me. I tried over the last 2 weeks to reason with him, but of no avail. I don't believe Travis is an honest person, and therefore I want nothing to do with him. So there are 2 elements to this, right? On one hand, he's like reducing his relation with Travis, saying that he's no longer a witness to the story. But on the other hand, he's clearly disgruntled, most probably for financial reasons, assuming that Travis potentially sold his story to some other company who wants to make a remake of that original film. And it seems like he was left out of that deal. So it's not as easy as saying, well, it clearly didn't happen because he redacts his witness statement, so to say. He's clearly also disgruntled, but we're not there yet. It gets even wilder. On April 30th, Rogers placed a call to producer Ryan Gordon, who was working on a new film about the Walton incident. Gordon recorded the call without Rogers' knowledge, as is permitted by Arizona law. 2 months later, on July 4th, Gordon publicly posted audio from the call, which featured Roger explaining, and this is a quote, and by the way, this phone call is on YouTube. It's a YouTube video. You can watch it yourself. I will link it down in the description. I'm not going to play it in this video because I'm worried that they're going to be like copy strike me just because I played 2 seconds of this clip. But I'm going to quote to you. And again, go listen to it yourself. It's a remarkable piece of audio. And in this recording, Rogers, who was part of that original logging crew, who was actually in fact the chief of that logging crew, had the following to say. This is a quote. "We were talking in the woods one day. We were talking about creating a UFO hoax, okay? I don't know how the UFO got there, but I remember when I was driving the truck and he jumped out, it was all deliberate. It was a staged thing, okay? He ran up there and there was something about the UFO not being real, although it looked real." So that's the original statement that he made, okay? Keep in mind, it seems like he was disgruntled because he was left out of a potential remake movie deal that Travis Walton may have been working on. But if you scroll down on the comments underneath this video that basically gives like the whole testimony, it's like a 5-minute and 11-second recording that again was secretly made, a secret recording of this conversation between Mike Rogers and Ryan Gordon, you can find a comment that gives a few updates on this story, and that's where it gets really, really wild. So the first update is Mike Rogers would like me to confirm that on May 1st, 2021, he had a change of heart in regard to him telling me that the UFO event was a hoax. I have no problem telling you folks that Mike has retracted his statement to me. However, Mike retracting his statement, whether it be the next day or in 10 years from now, has no bearing on the validity of the phone call he made to me on April 30th, 2021. Here's some more background information about the call made by Mike Rogers. All of the facts can be proven by way of emails, screenshots, text messages, etc. In short, Mike knows the call wasn't edited, and he offered me many damage control theories prior to its release. See below. On April 30th, 2021, Mike Rogers sent me a text message stating he had a secret he wanted to whisper in my ear. I told him I would call as soon as I could. Mike grew impatient and called me while I was driving. During this call, Mike Rogers shared the basic details of how he and Travis Walton hoaxed the globally known UFO case in which they are both part of. On May 1st, 2021, I took Mike Rogers to dinner and then decided he would head out to the forest in which the hoax took place. The reason being that I wanted Mike to walk me through how the event transpired in association with his phone call the previous day telling me the event was a hoax. First, we went to Gentry Lookout Tower and stayed there for roughly 30 minutes. Now, this is an important point. This comes back to something I spoke about earlier, because apparently these loggers did actually see a light sitting above that street, that road that they saw that night, and there was a light beam that shone on Travis Walton. It is not that they made this whole story up. And there are theories that explain how that might have been conducted that night. Now, Robert Sheffer, a longtime writer for the Skeptical Inquirer and a founding member of the UFO subcommittee of the Committee of Skeptical Inquiry, has theorized that that day when they were driving back home from their logging shift, they took Rim Road, which passes by Gentry Tower, which is a 70-foot tall Forest Service fire lookout tower equipped with a generator, 200 square foot living space for the lookout, an outer metal catwalk, and a spotlight. Sheffer suggests that Travis walked towards the tower, which was brightly lit above the treetops, until an accomplice in the tower illuminated him with the spotlight. Sheffer proposed that when Roger later drove the crew back to the supposed abduction site, they actually arrived at a different spot entirely, one that was closer to their Turkey Springs logging site. So the reference that he's making here in this YouTube comment giving this update is to that tower, because that tower is allegedly part of the story, and they used it to create the illusion. If it's dark, you wouldn't maybe see the core structure of the tower underneath, especially if it's embedded in trees. And if you then illuminate the top of the tower very brightly, it might give you the illusion of a bright light kind of hovering above the treetops. So anyway, going back to this set of updates that are posted underneath the YouTube video. On June 8th, 2021, I emailed a copy of the audio from this interview that he secretly recorded to both Travis Walton and Mike Rogers. On June 9th, 2021, Travis Walton emailed me back and asked me not to release the audio as it had the very real possibility of destroying his 45 plus years of hard work. Again, it has to be said, these are just allegations by Ryan Gordon, who is the guy who was working on this film about the Travis Walton incident. He's saying that's what happened. Obviously, I can't check the validity of that, but if that's true, boy, that casts a very, very dark shadow on this whole story. For the next several days, Travis Walton and I would talk about the release of the call, including a 2-hour phone call between the two of us. As a side note, Travis was always courteous and professional with me during this entire time. On June 14th, 2021, I received an email from Mike Rogers where he wanted to know what Travis and I were cooking up with the documentary and release of the phone call. Mike let me know that Travis had cut him off. Mike told me I used the whole thing with you to find out the truth about Travis Walton, and I have to some extent. Perhaps you could show me more of your association with the great Walton. On June 18th, 2021, Mike Rogers sent me an unsolicited copy of a drug screening for heroin, meth, opioids, cocaine, and methadone. I was unsure why he sent me this official report. I had never asked to see it. Also, as part of that email, Mike wrote the following. The thing you sneakily recorded, in which I told you about Travis and I possibly talking about a hoax, did not happen before our incident in 1975. It happened 2 years later, in 1977. Okay. I wrote Mike back calling his bluff, on which event he actually confessed to hoaxing. Jesus Christ, what a mess this is at this point, right? It's like there are these internal fights, and then there's this reporter or whoever, this guy who wants to make this film about it, and he's just caught between the front lines. He talks to Travis Walton, he's like, no, please don't release this footage, it's 45 years of work. And then he talks to the other guy, and he's like, what are you guys cooking up? And it feels like a lot of this stuff that's coming out is just because of the internal struggle between Travis Walton and Mike Rogers. On June 22nd, 2021, Mike wrote the following. You claim you are confused about which thing I emailed you about, whether it was 1975 or 77. It was 1977, you idiot. In 1977, Travis and I were talking about the skeptic's claim of it being a hoax, not before the encounter. I have now made that very clear. You are only confused because you choose to be. I'm confused. I mean, at this point, everyone is slightly confused, I think. On June 28, 2021, I sent Mike Rogers and Travis Walton a copy of the transcript for the call that was made on April 30th, 21, to give either of them an opportunity to fix any errors. Neither Mike or Travis cited any errors that they would like to fix. Mike did tell me the following. As for how it may damage Travis Walton, his reputation, or the future, I don't care. What I do care about is my sister Dana. Are you aware that Travis Walton cheated on Dana with one of Dana's close friends and has refused to give her a divorce in all those years since? Oh God. Oh God. Oh my God. It's like a soap. You know what I mean? It's like a soap opera. Well, that's just the way Travis Walton is. A cheat and a garbage collector who will make up any stupid sounding story for money. Oh God, dude is so grumpy. During this time, Mike is telling me, much like a game of tit for tat, that he had been recording me the entire time as well, and has me on recording saying something very incriminating, as well as having audio of him retracting his statement the very next day while we were out exploring in the forest. I, as well as others, have repeatedly asked Mike to release this audio, but he refuses, citing he has much bigger and greater plans to get revenge on me. I know for certain Mike does not have this call. Respectfully, Mike walks around with a cane, and it was making me nervous the entire time when we were in the mountains. I was afraid he was going to fall. As a result, I was watching him like a hawk to ensure he didn't hurt himself, as there are rocks all over the place in the area of that forest. After I told Mike this, his story later changed to him secretly placing a recording device on the dashboard of my truck. That is just ridiculous. Does anyone actually believe I would see a tape recorder sitting on my dashboard in a nearly 45 to 60 minute drive between these two places? Lastly, Mike has continued to email me almost daily. His messages are becoming more and more angry and filled with threats. I have even gone as far as telling him I would get an order of protection against him, and that I had no issue resolving the issue with law enforcement. This is not the first time I had known of Mike threatening someone physically. He did the same thing to Dave Miller at the 51 Areas podcast. Now, I'm not familiar with that particular incident, but again, this is the statement by Ryan Gordon, okay? I'm not making this up or taking this from anywhere, I'm just reading it out. And since he allegedly gave Mike and Travis the chance to redact statements, to comment on it, and release the footage that he has of the other recording to put these things right, which apparently never happened, at least I couldn't find it in my research, I personally tend to lend some credibility to these claims. On almost a daily basis, Mike emails me and demands that I answer one simple question, in which he refers to redacting his statement. I have posted on Mike's Facebook several times stating that Mike has redacted his statement to me. However, he continues to delete my comments because they also include dates and times and other evidence of Mike concocting the story about the call being manipulated. At the end of the day, I'm very tired of Mike hoaxing Rogers. That's how he calls him, it's not my words. Mike's confession to me that the event was hoaxed was not the first time he said such things. The only thing that is different is that he implicated himself. Now Mike is in damage control and doing whatever he can to change the facts. Tomorrow, which at that time was July 16, 2021, Mr. Robert Schäfer and I will be appearing on a prominent YouTuber's channel where we will discuss Mike's confession, whether we believe his retraction, show proof of everything I have stated here, as well as give a walkthrough of how the event was hoaxed, focusing on the Gentry Lookout Tower. Thank you for your time and critical thinking skills. Ryan Gordon. And just to complete the story, there's one other small update that is from July 15th, 2021. Mike Rogers issued the following statement on his Facebook page. I'm hereby retracting my accusation of Ryan Gordon's manipulation of that call made on the 30th of April, 2021. Although digital manipulation of anything digital is certainly possible. So he basically said that this call was manipulated at first, then he redacted that statement. Now, I don't know if Ryan Gordon put any legal threats in place saying like, you got to prove to me if you make these allegations of me manipulating that phone call, you need to prove that somehow. But Mike Rogers issued that statement on his Facebook page in 2021 saying, I believe that he did not manipulate that audio recording, even though it's possible. It's possible to manipulate audio recordings, but I don't think he did. But it's possible that you could. I love this whole thing. And one last remark that puts all of this even more into perspective from the Wikipedia page is that Mike Rogers and the Waltons were known for their interest in UFOs. One member of the logging crew recalled Mike Rogers and Travis Walton arguing about how UFOs fly. Rogers later acknowledged he had watched the first part of the recent television special that dramatized the Barney Hill alien abduction case, while the Waltons acknowledged prior discussions of wanting to be taken aboard a UFO. Again, all this is has reference links on Wikipedia, so you can go check out those references. The Walton family long had a reputation for pranks and practical jokes. One neighboring family, the Gibsons, recalled being the target of multiple pranks. Within 4 months of the incident, UFO author Raymond E. Fowler, himself a believer in UFOs and abductions, proposed that some of the members of the logging crew had been the victim of a hoax perpetrated by others in the crew. Authors including Klass and Flock argue that Travis Walton and Mike Rogers planned the incident. And there are more like members of the logging crew expressing doubt whether the story was actually real and so on. So personally, at this point, having heard all of this, I confidently conclude that, and this is just my opinion, that this whole story was a hoax and that they made it up. I can't prove that, and I'm not saying that's the ultimate truth, but having read all of this, having done the research around the case, that's kind of where I come to. But what a story. Good Lord, who would have thought that it takes so many turns and becomes so messy towards the end of it and literally almost turns into like a TV drama. Jesus Christ. What's interesting though, in my opinion, is that Mike Rogers got very verbal about all of this. He rejects his statements, then he makes crazy statements, then he comes forward and turns it around 5 different times, while Travis Walton seems to have stood in the background quite a bit. I mean, he obviously wrote this reporter like an email and said, please don't publish this recording. But besides that, Travis Walton stayed in the shadows. It seems like, at least from the reports of Ryan Gordon. So it's a fascinating story. I never knew how many twists and turns it had. And obviously, most of this is just stuff they will never tell you in any UFO documentary. And that's why I'm here to tell you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. And if you did, then please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel for more. If you want to continue the conversation, we have a Discord channel that is free to join. The link to that is down in the description. I'm hanging out there and many other people do as well. So we'd hope to see you on the Discord. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate your time. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. I'm out. Bye.